Well, welcome back, everyone, to the cutting room floor. I'm Taylor Foley, and I'm with my friend Wes.
How's it going, everybody?
It's good to be here with you, Wes. And we had a great Sunday at all three campuses of Grace Church, and excited to dive a little deep into this last week's sermon, especially around talking about David and having truth tellers in our lives.
Yeah.
And so, Wes, you kicked off our message about how there are these trigger statements of when someone needs to talk to us. What were some of those that you said?
Yeah, well, we did have a conversation ASAP. Would be one of the ones that freaks me out. Or is there a time we could sit down and talk, just the two of us? Or I have a concern. When would it be a good time to share it with me? It seems like people want to punt, like they want to give it time for it to like fester in my brain.
That's right.
Because I'm always like, let's talk right now, because I don't want to go home and think about this for 3 days.
They just want to bring on the pain, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
As you were saying those statements, I kept going back in my head and like, yep, had that conversation with the boss, had that conversation with the teacher. My wife and I, we use a statement. We say, we need to talk about something and you're not going to like it.
Oh, wow. You just go ahead and lay it out there for them. And then do you wait a week or something, or do you go ahead and talk
we let it simmer for a little bit, but not too long.
The punishment, that would be enough punishment for me because of what happens in my brain, in my village of voices that start worrying about stuff.
That's right.
And I'll have even imaginary arguments, like imagining what could they possibly say, and then I'll think of comebacks. It for some reason it's anxiety provoking. I feel defensive, and to be honest with you, I feel like that on both sides of the equation.
Okay, yeah.
Truth tellers, sometimes I can get more stressed out about that. Like I have to talk to somebody about something.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to go about it. And,
is it going to hurt their feelings?
Yes. How would they react? Mm-hmm. All those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so we used David sort of as a case study for being a truth teller. And you want to just sort of lay out for us?
Yeah, it's a soap opera. Yeah. I mean, if you want to read the Bible and not at all get bored or fall asleep, read the story. It's in 2 Samuel about King David, this Bible hero who has everything going up and to the right. And so he makes a terrible decision one spring, and there's a little commentary in there, while other kings were off to war, meaning David's not where he's supposed to be. And so he's hanging at the palace. It says when he woke up from his midday nap, which kind of infers, and I'm not positive about this, but how many naps does he take a day? Yeah. Is it like a cruise that he's on? Like wake up, go to the buffet, come back, take a nap?
Yeah.
So he's out strolling along the palace walls, and from that perspective, he could look down on people's homes, and he sees a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath, and as only God could orchestrate, her name is Bathsheba. I don't know what it is in Hebrew, but it probably is not as it doesn't line up so neatly.
Right, yeah.
But it's easy to remember. So he sees her, and at that point, he could have turned around, end of story, but he doesn't. He sends a messenger to find out who she is. Then he sends messengers to go get her, and the king would like to see you. And then they have a one-night fling, and she ends up pregnant. Yeah. And so David, it's like, don't do any more, dude. But he just makes it worse. He starts on a whole series of cover-ups, and these get progressively worse. He tries to lure her husband back from the battlefield to go home for a night, take a break from the war, and that doesn't work. And this guy's one of his friends. And after a few tries with that, eventually he sends a note to the commander back on the front lines and has Uriah, his friend, killed. Yeah. And so at this point, I'm thinking he thinks, whew, that was a close one.
Clear. I got it all covered.
Yeah. Because after there's a period of grief, then he brings Bathsheba into the palace and they get married. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure he's thinking, whew, I made it out of this. But the problem was God knew and he knew. And in that position, in that time and place, his life in the palace was wide open for everybody. Yeah. I mean, they didn't have social media or tabloids or paparazzi, but people were taking notes.
Yeah.
This was an open secret. And so God sends this prophet who'd known David for I don't know how many years. He was a student of Samuel who anointed David.
Yeah.
And so maybe they go back a long time. But Nathan tells David the truth. He is a truth teller. And he goes about it in a very humble way, a winsome way. He tells David a story about sheep, and David started out as a shepherd. When he was growing up, he was surrounded by sheep. And so he tells him the story about a rich man who's got tons of sheep, and then a poor man who's got one little lamb. And the rich man had a guest come over, wanted to serve some lamb chops, and so he takes the poor man's one baby lamb that used to eat at his table and drink from his cup, and that he held and cuddled in his arms. I mean, he brings this whole story.
Thing.
It's dramatic, right? So David gets so ticked off, and then David hears Nathan drop the hammer, and he just said, David, he said, whoever that man is deserves to be killed. And he says, you're the man.
Yeah.
You're that man, David. And then from there, we see the Lord's love for David come out in kind of a pleading with him. I've loved you and I've given you everything I've promised. Why were you unfaithful to me? Yeah. So you got all these layers of trouble in there. But what we see is the truth-telling ability of Nathan shows a few things. It shows courage, because he could have gotten killed. It speaks to his integrity, because one of the things we found out when we were researching this is in those times and places, not just anybody could get on and post something on social media.
Right.
You didn't just get to share your opinion. Right. Which is so different than our world today.
Absolutely.
I feel like everybody needs to know my opinion and everything about everything.
And I can click and there
it is for the world to see.
Yeah.
Right. Even if I have no clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I've got opinions on everything. But in those days, you had to have the life to back it up. You had to have a life of integrity, be well regarded before you could speak truth to power. And Nathan evidently had that. And then the last thing is that he's just humble, because this is not about Nathan. He makes it all about David, even speaking what he thinks would be David's language about using an illustration of sheep. So we can learn a lot about truth telling in this, and that is a lot to learn.
Right.
And then we can also learn a lot about truth receiving.
Yeah.
Because David doesn't get defensive.
Right.
David doesn't bow up. He doesn't have Nathan killed. He doesn't, and he just had a friend of his killed. This is not outlandish thinking.
Right.
If you're Nathan, you're
There were
nervous.
no guarantees for Nathan how this was going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he responds back to God, and Psalm 51 is one of the unique ones in our scripture. It has a little note before it. We read it at my men's group this morning, and we started with the scripture, and somebody said, hold on, we need to read this footnote. And it says, this is the prayer David prayed after the prophet Nathan came and spoke to him about his affair and adultery with Bathsheba. I mean, it is a
so
specific. Make no mistake. He went back to his prayer closet or wherever he prayed, and he wrote out this prayer. And it's, have mercy on me, God, is how it starts. Yeah. And then he moves into not just asking for forgiveness, but asking for a new start, creating me a clean heart, God. Yeah. Renew a steadfast spirit in me. Yeah. So he received those three qualities that Nathan has. We see those in David too. He's got the courage enough to agree with God. He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't argue with Nathan that Nathan somehow, you said it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And he returns to having integrity, seeking integrity. Yeah. And again, this takes humility. He had to shut his mouth and admit, man, I really messed up.
Right. Yeah. So let's camp out there around truth telling and truth receiving. Because when it comes to truth telling, I do think there's two types of folks. There are people who are ready, guns a-blazing, ready to tell everyone the truth. And,
right.
And sometimes as Christ followers, we feel this obligation that we need to tell people the truth because we have the word of truth, and
right.
And our God is a God of truth. And then there's this other side too, where people are nervous to tell the truth to other folks because of what the outcome could be.
Right.
And so if we're talking about truth telling, what are some tips for us? Mm-hmm. If we know that we need to speak to someone about some sort of truth that needs to be shared, or an encounter that we've had with people, what's the right approach? What are things that we need to keep in the back of our minds?
Yeah, I think what we see in Nathan's example that's also written about in the New Testament in the book of Galatians, when the Apostle Paul says, if somebody is caught in a sin, you who are godly. So there's a look in the mirror moment first for the truth teller. And so in my own life, what that meant is I have to work out my own stuff. Is this really about me? Am I going to go tell them the truth because I don't like something about, or you make me so angry? Well, really, I'm pointing at you, and I got three fingers pointing back at me.
Right. Yeah.
It's my fault I'm angry. I haven't been given dominion over my own emotions. How about that?
Yeah.
And so you can't actually control that. So that's not a godly thing. I could come to you and say, when this happens, I feel this way. Mm-hmm. But to place blame is something we don't see Nathan do. He lists out the facts of it, and David places blame on himself.
Right.
So he does it in a way that causes people to think instead of fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think so. First is you who are godly should go, and help restore them, but do this with gentleness and respect. And so this is not one of those barge in, scream moments, intimidation. I'm going to manipulate this with consequences and threats and all those kind of things. Because what goes into our minds when a conflict happened is we go to one of two things in our lower brain. I've learned from counselors and psychiatrists is that we have this part of us that will retreat to fight or flight.
Yeah.
But if we create a safe environment where people know that they're loved, and I think Nathan did this. He set a safe environment. Just, hey, David, I want to just tell you a story, man. So he tells him a story, and David falls for the truth.
Yeah,
in a way. So I think the first move is to look at our own life to check our agendas.
Okay.
And then I would say gentleness is the next thing. Is that we've got to be gentle with people, and that checklist makes me examine my own motives too.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to help you if I come to you and I'm mad.
Right.
So we got to keep things kind of chill. In the words of Captain Sully,
Right.
we've got to force calm on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you made this statement during the service. It was the slide, and we post this on Facebook, and I hope everyone has copied this and saved it somewhere on their phones or wherever, where when it comes to truth-telling and talking to people, we say when you're truth-telling, you need to say the right words to the right person at the right time, in the right way, with the right reason.
Yeah.
And so flesh that out a little bit. What does that look like for us?
Well, the first is this realization that not every truth is ours to tell.
Yeah.
And just because it's true doesn't give me a license to go around and try to, share my great wisdom with everybody. Nobody appointed me, as far as I can tell, even though I'm very disappointed about it, as Lord of the land, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think we have to discern, is this the right truth to share, first of all?
Yeah.
Because it may be true, but it's not the right. We don't have a relationship with the person, or we ourselves are struggling, and this was playing out in those kind of things. So this becomes a checklist for me.
Yeah.
Am I saying the right words to the right person in the right way at the right time for the right reason? Because any of those gets messed up, and you've got a problem.
Absolutely.
Some dad is stressed out about his work and tells you, I'm really struggling with paying the bills this month or whatever. You're like, well, while we're at it, let me just go tell you something you're doing that's annoying me because you're my friend.
Right.
Like, that's not a good time.
No.
Don't say that. Right?
Yeah.
And when somebody's afraid or when they're emotional, that's not a good time either.
Right. You use this example, and as a parent of 3 kids in
I was going to
school,
say, no,
yeah, I felt this of, you said when your kid hits the honor roll,
yeah,
and your friend's kid is struggling in school, that's not the time to say, look at my kid and my all-A honor kid.
Yeah.
It's true, and your friend probably wants to celebrate that with you, but not at the time when they're struggling.
Yeah. Eugene Peterson is one of my favorite writers, and he had a line that I read in my devotions about a week ago, and he said, compassion is always better than being right. Compassion is always better than being right. And boy, I like to be right, but that's not righteousness always.
Right, yeah.
Just because it's the truth. I mean, Jesus knew a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we've talked about around here how he asked 307 questions.
Yeah.
Because part of these kind of truth-telling moments is to help guide a person into something that they may not have seen.
Yeah.
I think it was Tom Landry, coach of the Dallas Cowboys back when they were good, before you were born. Sorry, Cowboys fans. But he said a coach is somebody that tells you things you don't want to hear about things you don't see in order to help you become all you wanted to become.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing in these truth-telling moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what about in moments when we feel we're checking the box, right words, right person, right time, right way, right reason, but maybe that person is not in a place to receive. A lot of times we'll talk about having difficult conversations, being a truth teller with folks who are wise, but then also there are foolish folks as well.
Yeah.
What would you have to say about that?
Yeah. Well, what I think we're responsible for are those 5 things is to do this in the right godly approach. Mm-hmm. And then from there, the results are really up to God and that person.
Yeah.
So when I let go of control and when I let go of the result, then I'm more free to just say, well, this is what I think, and well, you're wrong. Okay, I could be wrong. That's a statement that set me free.
Yeah.
Is I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And when they say you're wrong, it's like, okay, I told you I could be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no surprise there.
Yeah.
And instead of having these endless quarrels about right and wrong, you're pretty much just sharing a perspective. And if that person can't gain that perspective, then, I'm a lot like that many times. And maybe I think it was the right time to say that to a person, but for them, it wasn't the right time.
Right.
I mean, how do we know what's
Yeah.
going on in their soul? And so I think if we can approach this, knowing that we are all two people depending on the situation. Sometimes we're wise, and the Proverbs speak about what wisdom looks like.
Yeah.
And a wise person, when you offer them some kind of correction or truth-telling, they say, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you love me enough to tell me what the truth is. And I was just having a lunch with a friend, and he was asking me about the sermon. And he said, listen, just so you know, if I'm ever in a place where I'm doing something stupid, just come and tell me, okay? Because don't beat around the bush. I need to know.
Yeah.
And we look for that in life.
Yeah.
We look for people that love us enough to tell us the truth. That's a wisdom. That's a wise person's response.
Yeah. And that takes time to build too.
Yeah. So this is about relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I don't know the person and know, some things about them and have a track record of trust, then we're just walking up trying to police the world.
Yeah.
And God's pretty much got that. He doesn't need our help
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
So that's so a wise person. And when I'm wise, because again, we're both these people. When I'm wise, I go, thank you, Taylor. That was an extremely helpful insight. When I'm acting the fool, when I'm being foolish, that's when defensiveness sets in and argumentative and, well, you're the one that's wrong, and
Right.
speaking of truth telling, I'm going to tell you the truth. And it becomes this conflict. But really, if you look behind that door, I think, at least for me, what's behind the foolishness a lot of times is fear. It's just a fear of maybe I'm not doing this.
Okay.
I'm not handling this situation in the way that God would have me do it. And so I get afraid, like, uh-oh, did I mess this up? And so in that moment, the person that's telling the truth's got to give me some space to have this meeting with,
Process.
Yeah. Is this a foolish response or what's a wise response?
Yeah.
And typically a wise response, at least for me, I've learned begins with thank you.
Okay.
So whatever is said, that a person comes to you is an honor.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, people have lots of opinions about God, church, theology, biblical interpretation, organizations. We see this a lot. And I used to get scared when people were like, I got to tell you something about this. I don't like X, Y, and Z. And now I'm like, thank you for coming to tell me.
Yeah.
Because what is worse is when somebody goes behind your back
Ugh.
or public now with social media, we can just bash each other online.
Right.
And that's no fun. So really, even if somebody that you consider, a difficult person comes to you and they want to tell you something, then thank you.
Right. So let's flip the script and we're sort of talking about this. When we're needing to receive truth telling, how do we create that type of posture? What needs to be happening within us to be able to wisely receive truth telling from other folks?
Yeah. I think for me, it's a realization that this person, at least in their heart, has something they're trying to teach me.
Okay.
They're trying to help me.
Yeah.
And even if the approach is wrong and the issue's not exactly spot on or their facts are not, they're coming to me to talk to me because they want to help me. So I think it's a move of humility.
Okay.
And it's also a recognition that I don't have all the answers to everything.
Yeah.
And I can miss stuff. And if people aren't looking after me, then I could be in trouble. I think this posture begins with the statement that I made that I didn't learn until, I was in my mid-30s probably, about there, but by the grace of God go I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when we get filled with our own ego, then we edge God out, ego, and we're not open, we're not teachable anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to be that guy. I was that guy, and I don't like him.
Yeah.
He's difficult, and it's hard to gain vulnerability and authenticity and experience love really when there's fear present.
I love that when we were talking about Nathan being a truth teller, he exhibited humility and integrity and courage. But then we also see the same thing in David
Yeah.
as he was receiving that truth telling. And so when we're in that position, integrity is a big thing for me. That's one of my favorite words.
That's a core value of your life.
It's
and
core
I love that
value
about
for,
you.
Yeah. And so when it comes to receiving truth, we have to be able to step back and ask, are my actions lining up with my intentions and my words?
That's it, because that's integrity.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you mean, what you say, and what you do have to all be in alignment.
Right.
And once those are integrated, we have integrity.
Right. And there's sometimes that even when we feel like we are having integrity, the way that people are receiving us may come off a different way.
So you ask about this. Here's the other thing I've had to realize is that whatever somebody is experiencing and feeling is real for them.
Yeah.
So when my wife would say, when you do that, it makes me so sad. I'd say, no, it doesn't. And then I caught myself. I'm like, that's ridiculous. How do I know? I mean, she's leveling with me. This is not working for me.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work for her, then it doesn't work for us. And so I've had to learn to just kind of, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
And this is where getting curious and not defensive comes in. And this stuff is hard to do, but I think this is spiritual maturity.
I agree.
In a couple of weeks, we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit is love. And that love is sometimes expressed in self-control. Mm. And so I think a mature follower of Jesus, the person that I see in Jesus, is like cool with whatever you need to share. And if you're experiencing this, I mean, people were mad at Jesus. They walked away from Jesus. They were disappointed in Jesus. They were happy with Jesus. They were worshiping Jesus. Then they turned on him. But he was just the same dude with that confidence, and he could receive it all.
Right. Yeah. So towards the end of your message, you just shared some personal stories of how you've had a few small groups and people in your lives who they've been people that you can speak truth to and that they can speak truth to you. And so I guess my question is for those who call Grace Church their spiritual home, how do we begin that process of inviting people in? Mm-hmm. Because it does take a long time. And we mentioned trust. And what else would be some next steps for folks?
Yeah, I think trust grows over time. And I think in relationships, what we often will do to see if we can go to another level of being authentic is to kind of test it. Let me just level with you that I'm having a hard day and I need your prayers.
Yeah.
All right. That's true. I could say I'm having a hard day because, and then fill in some details, and that's a little bit more revealing. And I do believe trust grows over time. The sad thing is trust can be lost in an instant. Mm-hmm. When we share something in confidence and then somebody, and I say to myself, well, that person's not on the list.
Yeah.
And we're not looking for a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
Truth tellers, you need probably 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, and then from there it's gravy, right?
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't have that one. And I think keeping relationships superficial. Here's what I'll say. Author Bill Thrall, he wrote a book called True Faced that I recommend. He said that the degree to which I let you love me is the degree to which you can love me, no matter how much love you have for me. And so if you have a gallon of coffee, you have a great coffee maker in your office. Yeah, man, and so, and there it is. Yeah. And so if you have a gallon of coffee and I only bring you a little, sippy cup, then you can't fill it up more than I will let you.
Right.
Because I put a lid on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes in my life, I felt alone and I felt unloved. And then I had to look in the mirror and go, I'm blocking people out of fear.
Yeah.
And so I don't want them to know the real me, or I'm worried about this area. If I tell them who I really am, will I still be loved? And this is the beautiful thing about Jesus. He knows every single thing about us.
Yeah.
And he loves us with every single bit of grace he has.
Yeah.
And that's a given. That's where we start.
Yeah.
And so that is important to me.
That's great. As we talk about this, I think about this word that we use a lot in church is this word accountability.
Yeah.
And that really, if you're looking to take the next step in your relationship with Christ or with others, if you can find someone that holds you accountable, not because they're trying to bop you on the head or anything, but they want to help you grow. They want to help you succeed in life and see you do well in your relationship with Christ. Being held accountable is a beautiful thing.
It is. And somehow our culture has gotten this thought, and I'm a part of it, and had the same fear that accountability is like like we got busted.
Absolutely.
Or here comes the punishment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what I led with the worst statement of all is let's have a come to Jesus meeting. And then nobody invites Jesus.
Right.
And so that's not God's idea of accountability.
Yeah.
It's out of relationship. It's out of love. It's out of trust in this. And so we need to have those things in place so that we can have some honest conversations.
Right. There's no condemnation and
That's
accountability.
Right.
Yeah. When
Right.
it comes to Jesus.
So in our movement, this Methodist movement of grace started by John Wesley, they had a great phrase that I think we could recapture that really means the same thing as accountability. It's watch over one another in love.
In love. Yeah.
Watch over one another in love. And we'll say a similar thing. It's a desire of our heart, for somebody to say, I got your back.
Right.
Or I'm with you.
Yeah.
Or hang in there. Or,
Yeah.
I got your six. I got,
Right.
we have all these phrases.
Ride or die. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we like, when somebody says like, oh, thank you.
I'm safe.
I'm in a safe place. And that means somebody actually loves me. So I talked about a couple of instances where my covenant group, we had some discussions about my behaviors and integrity and how does that work? And they asked hard questions. And, I felt like I was on the hot seat some, but I would alternate between, my responses is it going to be foolish or is it going to be wise? And I had to realize these people are here to help me. And they love me enough to tell me something that maybe nobody else wants to.
Right.
And so I need to listen because if I blow up back at them, then nobody's going to come and talk to me again.
Yeah.
And so we need to create an environment where there's just a safe place to have real honest discussions that are non-combative so that we can grow because the whole story is about relationships. The story of the Bible is about relationships. The story of faith is about relationships. Yeah. And there's no such thing as free agency in Christianity. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't work that way. You and I love basketball, and I met a guy one time, and I said, he was really tall, so I was like, hey, you play basketball? And he's like, yeah, I do. I'm a professional basketball player. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. What team do you play for? Oh, nobody. I don't play for a team. And in my head, I didn't say it out loud. He was huge. But I'm like, then you don't really play professional basketball if you don't have a team.
You don't have a team.
Yeah. And it's the same way with our spiritual life. We got to have a team with us. And they're not perfect people. And this is where we bump into each other. And that's where any relationship that is built on trust can then extend into forgiveness, grace. Yeah. I've said before that any long-term friendship, and we've known each other forever, and it's the story of two great forgivers. Because there's been times you've had to forgive me. Yeah. And I can't really think of any that I've had to forgive you, but I'm sure they're there if I dig long enough. So, to be able to make quick recoveries is important, especially when it comes to family life, work life, school life, even neighborhoods and stuff. What would it look like if we really listened to each other and really watched over one another in love? That'd be a different
transformative
world.
Transformative. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so some quick next steps for all of our family here at Grace Church at all of our campuses is maybe there's one person that you sit next to every Sunday morning, and that person can hold you accountable. Yeah. We have small groups at all of our campuses. At the Cape campus, we're launching a bunch of new ones this Sunday. And so stop by our cafe. But I also know at the Shores campus in Central, there are groups willing and ready to have new folks jump in. So we just encourage you just to ask and speak to one of your pastors. And we would love to help you get connected because this could be community transformative. But we definitely know it is soul transformative as well. Yeah. That if we get in these accountable relationships and have truth tellers, we're going to grow closer to Jesus.
Yeah, and the accountability questions don't have to be some major, thing. It's just, it can go like this. Hey, you said last week for me to pray for you about your work schedules too much. So how's that going?
Yeah.
And then be quiet. That's the accountability question. So it's not, I'm here to check on your salvation and the state of your soul and your, destiny. It's not that it's just conversations between two people with trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, Pastor Wes, thanks so much for sharing your heart on this.
Thank you, Taylor.
It's a great conversation. And Grace Church, we love doing this with you. And so we just pray that you would have a blessed week this week and that you would find that person in your life that can help be a truth teller, but then also that can help you grow in your relationship with Christ. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye. God bless you.